Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. For this video, I'll be reviewing the DM's Guild one-shot adventure Autumn Blues, Waterdeep Shadow Heist number 3, designed by Christian Eichhorn for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your DM's Guild shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Shout out to my platinum patrons Andrew, Brian, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, and Charles, and gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy and Yuma, Marcos, David, Vicente, Gilberto, Sean, aka Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, Alkshi, and Sam. Thank you all very much for your support. Hopefully you have seen my reviews of the first two Shadow Heist one-shot adventures, because they are largely similar in their design and structure, as well as the positives and negatives that I have for all of them. And this one largely follows the same pattern. It's got some really cool parts about it, namely it has an extra dungeon built underneath where the actual heists take place, which is really cool. We got an actual Dyson Logos dungeon map and kind of a nifty little idea there, and I really liked that. Unfortunately, it also has a few steps backwards in that it doesn't have the proper NPC reactions and consequences, which the first one did not. The second one did, so I was like, oh, yay, we're going to start getting them now. And then this one doesn't, so it's like a step backwards. And then the actual heist itself, I guess because we have that dungeon where the meat of it takes place, was probably one of the weaker, probably the weakest of the three overall, not including that extra dungeon. So I really wanted to declare this the best one, because I feel like that was kind of how I was thinking with looking at how, oh, it's got a dungeon here and all that. But it really feels like it is kind of a mixed bag, similar to the first two heists. So let's jump in and see what we get. So divided into three parts. As always, you are in Waterdeep. Your characters are working for the Thieves Guild, and these are all three of them designed specifically for Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Obviously, you could do it in any urban environment, but if you want to have your players just do some kind of cool roguish content while they're in a city, these are some cool ideas for that. This one takes place in I guess an art gallery. It's a fall Eladrin, because there's the seasonal Feywild elves. Has this art shop slash house slash place that he sells his art out of, usually like sculptures and paintings and things. And there was this noble woman who has an affair with him and left her pearl necklace at his place, which seems kind of silly and mundane, but that is also the kind of thing that you would hire professionals to go take care of. So you need to go try and get this thing back from him, because she doesn't want to be seen over there trying to get it done, and she needs these pearls, blah, 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 blah. Unbeknownst to the heroes and everybody else, the Eladrin, who is named Autumn, has I guess it's not his business, but he works with a criminal mastermind who is abducting people that he does paint and sculpt for. So there's this kind of twisted thing where, and it's predominantly beautiful, noble women, high-class women, that he is making these art for, and then when he finishes like a sculpt or a bust or something, that person then gets kidnapped and dragged underground, put into shackles, and then presumably there's a whole slavery thing or sex trafficking thing. I don't know what's going on. They're also making drugs down there. As you can tell, there's a content warning here on the first page, so just know that's really what you're getting into. It's kind of like the Taken movie almost, where it is not explicit at all in terms of any kind of violence or sexual violence or anything like that. So you don't have to worry, but it's not. It has a content warning here that stuff is there, but it's not explicit at all. You can find the prisoners, but it doesn't go into anything that's going on or anything of that nature. So and same thing with the drug use and stuff. It's not like this is a CD den or anything. This is not a M for mature rated scenario, even though it does have some pretty kind of dark stuff involved. But that makes it more interesting, the fact that you can actually stumble upon a dungeon that you didn't know was there. So you were sent to just steal these pearls back from this art gallery, and it's only 4 or 5 rooms or something, a little 2-story shop somewhere in Waterdeep. But then you end up discovering this hidden. It was an old crematorium, I believe, underneath this art gallery that you can explore, and it's a full little dungeon that's got a bunch of bandits running around, and the mob boss is a master thief, and they're making drugs and they're stealing goods, which you find the necklace down there, and then they are kidnapping people, and then who knows what they're doing with them. It never explains it, but and obviously you can rescue a bunch of people. So you really go from like you're a bunch of roguish thieves trying to like steal this thing back for a good cause, I guess in theory, to like suddenly you can kick down the doors of this whole like rotten establishment and become heroes, which I guess that's kind of cool for like a coda in this entire series, is suddenly you can be elevated to that. But you're also still supposed to do it on the down low. I guess you're supposed to be clandestine about working, and you're not supposed to let Autumn know about that you're here on this woman's behalf and all that. So that seems a little bit more incongruous. Um, but part one is all about the mission, and once again, we don't get a level range here, which has annoyed me and irked me for all of these. It just, if you're gonna do very specific DC levels and certain monster stat blocks, then all that does is make me have to guess, like, okay, what were you going for? At least give me a tier. Like, is it tier 1, is it tier 2, is it tier 3? You don't have to give me an exact level range, but just fucking ballpark it. This one does feel like it's a little higher level. The DCs are all pretty high. I mean, look at that, a DC 19 Thieves Tool check. Just to find the hidden trapdoor is a perception of 16, a passive perception of 16, or an 18 intelligence check. I don't like any of that because you basically need to find this fucking trapdoor in order to continue the adventure. So I don't like gating. There needs to be that, or you have to have some way of information, like if the party confronts, Autumn, then obviously he gives it up. But none of that information is here, unfortunately. You don't get any kind of. I mean, there's notes on how to roleplay him in the Dramatis Personae, which is fine. But I was really hoping, and something that these adventures really haven't done, is give me some dialogue between the characters. What if the characters, confront Autumn, or what if they, hide out? What if one of the characters wants to pose as a noble person and get in there? Give me some of that information in there, some what ifs. Otherwise, you're just giving me just the barest bones of information for me to build off of. And I get that's one of the hardest things to do in the DM's Guild. It's like, well, how do I write an adventure and not just railroad and over-explain everything? Well, that's me as a DM. I get to make that choice. You give me as much information as I can, and then me as the DM, I can choose, okay, what do I want to improvise and what do I want to try to have set in stone in front of me. So one of my biggest complaints, similar to the first two Shadow Heist adventures, was there's just not quite enough information here to feel like I can confidently run this adventure, given all the cool things that players can do in a heist. And I know that's mentioned in the preamble to this, is like, yeah, we don't know what your player's going to do, so good luck. It's like, well, give me a few examples, give them some ideas. And I ranted about that, I think, for the first two reviews of these as well, so this kind of just continues with that flaw. And same thing with the level range. Like, I don't know what they're going for here, because the rewards are like 500 gold a piece for getting these objectives done, which is cool. So it tells me it's got to be tier 2. I believe all the enemies that you find later on are bandit captains, which this one, unlike the first two, maybe the second one probably does end up with a combat sequence, at least at the end against the boss. But this one, for sure, I mean, it is a straight-up dungeon crawl, at least in the second half. So you are fighting a bunch of monster. You're going through, and suddenly the heist kind of falls apart as you're just kind of crawling through this dungeon. So on the one hand, it kind of loses its flavor, but on the other hand, I appreciate having a little bit of a dungeon crawl in here. That's at least kind of a neat designed dungeon. The what is it called? The Autumn's House of Arts is not anything special. Unfortunately, kind of similar to the first two heists, where the heist areas themselves are just kind of mundane houses or inns, or in this case, an art gallery. It's just a bunch of there's a one trap door that you have to find basically to continue the adventure. Otherwise, there's a few bits of gold you can find, some bits of treasure. You can probably find his drug stash. That's about it. You need to find this trap door to really continue. So the house itself is or the art gallery is, out of the three, the least interesting of all of the heists, just based on the heist area. But then, when you actually find the slaver hideout, which is built out of an old an underground crematorium, then it gets really cool. Like, I'm going to go down a few pages so you can see the actual map here is pretty nifty. You go down this shaft in number 1. There's all the shackled prisoners down here at 4. there's a really neat kind of semi-puzzle that has a bunch of levers, chains that you can pull. Labeled A, B, C, D, and E. Only two of them are intact, but there's some of them you can fix and pull levers, and that opens different secret doors. Or they might do nothing, or they might sound like a bell, which would indicate all the bandit captains come running. I like that concept a lot, but it really doesn't end up mattering at all because all they do is potentially open this area to number 10, which is the actual like crematorium, grate that apparently leads down into a level on the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which is really a cool tie-in to tie both Dragon Heist and Dungeon of the Mad Mage together. Which is neat, but the only thing you find in there is like a ghost that can possess your party, and then it just kind of goes into a dialogue session. Like, it really just doesn't do. You can, in other words, skip the entire lever puzzle thing, and it doesn't matter. Like, to complete this adventure, it's just a pure side thing, and the side thing doesn't end up being as interesting, at least written on paper. So that was kind of disappointing. But I like that we got a dungeon here. There's bandit captains. There's doors where people have to do secret knocks and get through. You can see very, very tight, small hallways, which would be very interesting for. There's like a lot here. There's a master thief, and I believe like 10 bandit captains in here. Which can come running. There's sentries posted all over, so obviously if they trip an alarm. I was a little disappointed there's no like straight up traps everywhere. You'd think they would set up some kind of system, but they just have a bunch of locked doors and a few sentries set out, so that's fine, I guess. But it just ends up kind of being a straightforward, you're probably kicking down doors and fighting people. So compared to the first two, at least that part's a lot different. I didn't expect this to have a full-blown like dungeon crawl in the bottom of it, and y'all know I like dungeons. I'm not even a big fan of the Dice and Logos dungeons, but I actually liked that this one has a little bit more detail and color to it. That honestly is a big difference to me. Having just a little bit of color involved, and then having some detail like the little bed palettes and things like that is very cool. And you do get separate player maps for the whole DM's Guild bundle. So you get this embedded in here, but you also get the separate player maps that you could play off of. So that's a big thumbs up. I like that there's a dungeon here. It doesn't quite do everything I want it to do, but I thought the design was interesting. I don't agree with the fact that people have to first find the trapdoor. What if they can't find that trapdoor? You can't finish the adventure. I mean, you can shake down the Eladrin, I guess, but there's no information on there. Like, would he give up the information? Is there a skill check involved? It's just not, that's the kind of information that I really wanted. So that's a bit of a bummer. It does have the timeline of events, which is something all three of these heists have done, and it's very cool and something I want to see all heist adventures do in the future, because that's important, is dictate what is happening when the players arrive, and then kind of an overarching what are the events that happen that you can throw at the players as the adventure transpires. The first one did this really well. The second one did this okay. And the third one is okay. It might be the weakest of the three also. Although the players, they can arrive and then witness a kidnapping, which would then, but again, they have to have that passive perception, which is, frankly, those are high rolls. They can witness the kidnapping and hear that and then realize something has gone amiss. So that would be a cool way of introducing the fact that like there's something else going on here, and then they could discover, the secret trapdoor and all these things. So I think that could be a really cool event, but otherwise that's really all that happens. And I guess that kind of makes sense because the players are meant to go in this dungeon, so you don't really need a whole lot of events on the top side, because once they go in the dungeon, who fucking cares about what the Eladrin's doing? There's nothing really up there that the players need. So it's a weird mixed bag. Like, I really like the concept of having a dungeon underground that the players have to discover and find, and it ends up being this whole big, slavery, kidnapping ring, drug making ring that you had no idea was going on, because you're essentially given this mission and immediately have to go to this house without really being able to, and that's part of the adventure, is you don't really get a chance to really plan things out very well. You just go to this art gallery and then thinking you just need to steal something, and then it ends up being you have to go into this dungeon and just go pretty straightforward. So that part's interesting, but on the other hand, the actual heist stuff, like the timeline of events and the information to properly run the heist in terms of, what are the events happening on the top, aren't quite as interesting or memorable as the other adventures. So it's a little bit, and you don't get that reaction to like what happens, if the players make it down there, what are the consequences to the Eladrin? Like, and it does mention in his section at the beginning that let's see, he will do everything to get the characters killed by Kuvert unless the character succeeds in a DC 20 charisma check. So you can try and get him on your side, but he'll mainly try to warn like the criminals if they make it down there. So that kind of stuff is good. I needed a lot more of that kind of information, like what happens, how do people react during certain events. Those are the kind of important things. So it ends up being a mixed bag. This is probably, out of the three, this is probably the one if I had to choose one to run, if for some reason I had to just do one of these, I would probably choose this one just because I liked the dungeon design. I would probably change some things around, but or at least lift this dungeon in general because I think it's pretty neat. But I think the dungeon does make it probably the most interesting for me, even if the actual NPCs involved and the timeline and the heist aren't the most interesting, which is a bit of a bummer. And overall, since this is the third of the three adventures, I think I would have rather all three of these maybe been a little less detailed and then bundled together under one product that was like, here are some heists you can run for Dragon Heist or really any kind of urban environment. So then I would have been way more forgiving on not having enough information to run, for individual scenarios and consequences and reactions and all that. Had it been, multiple things, I would have factored that in. But because these are each sold as separate full products, I think they are lacking in giving me enough information to properly run the adventure. So either I would have liked to seen each of these expanded further into a little bit more information, or had them been even less information, maybe even less detail, only slightly less than this, honestly, and then had them all bundled together as like, here are a collection of heists that you can choose to run, either as part of a series or just pick and choose whichever ones that you like. So I think that would have been the way I would have gone forward. All right, let's go over my pros and cons for Autumn Blues. Pros, exact copy and paste from my first two pros, is that I love the design, which I didn't talk about at all in this one because I mentioned it in the first two reviews, but I love this like weathered like book design, this pulpy dime store novel, and the character portrait art that's painted on, like this one here. I think that's a really, really cool look, and it helps tie them all together as part of the series, and it's just a neat presentation. The blue boxes are, it's nice to have the sidebars, but they're just jarringly, like, I don't like that color. Literally, in terms of everything else, looks nice and weathered, but then this one is very out of place. But overall, I like the visual design. Pro, we got the timeline of events, which I like, although this one is probably the weakest timeline. I still like that it's there, and it's something I want to see all heists do, is give me a proper breakdown of what's happening when. So as the DM, you know how to how to make things more reactive and have events happen to the players while they're doing it. Pro, there's a surprise dungeon involved. The players don't even know that they have to get under a trapdoor and go through a freaking dungeon crawl, and that dungeon is properly mapped out with separate player maps and everything. So huge, huge plus to that. I think that's really cool. It helps set this heist apart. It's just unfortunate that the heist itself is just not as interesting. Hopefully not as a result of including this other dungeon in there, but I feel like there would have been a version of this that would have had an interesting heist with good reactions, consequences, information, and also that dungeon on there. Then this would have been far away the best one. Cons, the actual maps for, which I didn't even show those, did I? For the art gallery is the bare bones, just black and white sketchings. It fits the visual quality of this actual book, but for actual playing on a tabletop or digital virtual tabletop, whatever, is just a no-go. I don't like this design much at all. No detail, no nothing. It stinks. Cons, and no level ranges provided. That has been incredibly irksome throughout. I don't know what you're going for in terms of the challenge rating or the rewards. And I get that stuff's very malleable, but if it is, then still give me a damn level range, because some of these, a DC 25 charisma check on like this, these are very, very high skill checks and lots of rewards, but you're still ultimately just fighting bandit captains and master, which that's a pretty high CR. So are you going for maybe level 10 here? Is it supposed to be challenging for level 7? I get that's me as a DM to make that choice, but just give me a ballpark in there somewhere. Give me something. And then con, there's no proper like NPC reactions or consequences, which is my same complaint from the first one, which the second one had, and this one probably doesn't have like a little section at the end that explains like how are different people reacting to different situations, what happens to just in specific areas. You know how to, I guess, and this one has a lot less NPCs. So like, can they rescue that person? Does that person do something? Does the Ladrin follow them down in there and try to sabotage them? Does they try to pass it off as there's nothing here? It just says that everybody, and if they try to go back and it was the aftermath of the characters freed the prisoners. Then the rumors spread. The city guard arrives 2 days later, but everybody's gone. The hideout's abandoned, which is a really, really lame ending to that whole thing. Because again, the players, it's a weird system because the players are kind of kicking down the doors and saving people, but that's not actually what they're there to do. They're meant to be clandestine rogues and shadow thieves, so kind of weird. All right, final verdict. The surprise secret underground dungeon adds much-needed depth to Autumn Blues, the third adventure in the Shadow Heist series. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. You can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.